Welcome, all you bodhisattvas. That's what we've been chanting. To be one with our original bodhisattva nature, our original enlightened, enlightening, compassionate wisdom nature. So you can chant this anytime. You don't need a book. When you're driving, when you're waiting in line and there seems to be no end to the line, when you're sitting at a stoplight, when you're having an argument with someone, just right there, right there. Oh, what am I saying? I don't need to say that. Instead, I think I will just chant. And the person you're arguing with doesn't even know it. But you change. And suddenly there's, wow. So, Namu Dai Bo Sa. On this turning of the year, the last few moments of 2024. Did you like it? Didn't like it? And there's more to come. Yes, it's a time of great concern. And it's easy to get despondent. To dread the repercussions of so many mean-spirited pronouncements. But what's most important is to give ourselves over to a steady and unwavering spiritual practice. We're facing significant challenges. And we're the lucky ones. It's not only, of course, in this country, but everywhere. The climate disasters and those who deny them and keep them getting worse. Famines, floods, storms, fires, extinction, drawing ever closer to nuclear holocaust. All the wars in Gaza, Lebanon, Africa. Right now, there have never been so many wars in Africa as there are at this time. Ukraine. And all those who at this moment have no home, no shelter, no food, no medicine. So you may say, I don't want to hear all this stuff. I really wanted to come here to get away from it. good luck. If we don't acknowledge it, then we're implicated, right? And after all, we're really looking at what practice means. When we hold on to the belief in a separate self and create the illusion of us versus them, these conditions only worsen. What Shakyamuni Buddha and all the great teachers in all the spiritual traditions have pointed out is it's up to us. We can do the work of transformation. We can resolve to lead a life of virtue in the midst of no knowing. Within us, we know what will be helpful, what will not. Even though we can't figure out any of the complexities, we can do our best to offer loving kindness as our full-hearted response to every situation. When you hear yourself saying something like, well, that person doesn't deserve my whatever, however you want to put it, my care, my help, really think, wow, that's not in keeping with my true nature, my bodhisattva nature. So this is what we are cultivating in this practice. This amazing practice. And it's only possible when we don't believe our own opinion mongering. Do you know what opinion mongering is? It's what goes on all the time. We have to remember, as Eno Wenong, the sixth ancestor, said again and again, there is not one single thing. We posit everything and think it has solidity and permanence. And he was awakened when he heard the line from the Diamond Sutra. A bodhisattva should develop a mind that alights on nothing whatsoever. Yamakara Roshi just sent 3 shikishi, small panels, paintings with calligraphy to Daibosatsu Zendo, one for the monastery, one for New York Zendo, and one for us here. And on it is a painting of, what do you think? For the Year of the Snake. And he wrote a New Year's letter, which I will try to read. There's a calligraphy at the top of it. And the translation is, for a person of virtue, there are no enemies. So when we feel ourselves getting caught there, those people are wrong. I would never do that. Or whatever formulation you may be likely to speak of, just remember, there are no enemies. A person of virtue, Yamakara Roshi writes, is one able to be both strict on oneself and kind to others. Being strict on oneself implies an attitude of constant learning and growth, while true kindness implies an attitude of compassion toward all beings. For the year of the snake, we should ask why the snake, an animal that in the East as well as the West is often viewed in a negative light. Why it is included in the Chinese zodiac. This is because our world is filled with all kinds of beings and situations. There are people we love and people we can't help but despise. There are situations that are favorable for us and some that are problematic. When a person is able to approach all beings and situations with an equanimous mind, then we can say that he or she is a person of great virtue. For the year of the snake, may we each work towards becoming such a person of equanimity. The year of the snake. The snake year is also known as a year of wisdom and transformation. What does the snake do? What is the snake known for? Shedding.
Its old skin.
Shedding, right? Shedding the entire thing. All that exterior form. And the old skin, when it becomes old, it gets kind of thickened and opaque. And as the snake is trying to get out of this no longer useful, actually, we might say this impediment of the old skin, becomes temporarily blind. He has to, in other words, enter into no seeing, no knowing. And he has to rub his head, or she has to rub her body against some kind of narrow passage in order to peel this skin off. And it's really hard. It's hard to shed. Have you ever seen it? Right? Takes some time. It's a struggle.
And they're vulnerable at that time.
and very vulnerable at that time. So this thick, opaque skin, kind of dried up, is gone. And what's left? Newborn. Renewing. We are doing this in our practice. We may not think of it, but we are doing this. This is what we mean by transformation. The struggle to become new, not to be in this blind state, and yet we have to go through no seeing in order to see. So I think of the snake, and I think of Edo Shimato Roshi's saying, it's worthy to struggle. Worthy to struggle. We have to. Otherwise, we are just like that dead skin that's covering over our ability to see clearly. And so we have to drop it away. And that's where the equanimity comes from. Dropping away our self-identification. Dropping away our views and opinions. Dropping away our preferences. And with this clear seeing, we know what to do. We see what's in front of us. We just do it. We take care of it. And like it or not, successful outcome or terrible outcome, we just continue on. We return to the source again and again. Just this breath, this move. So even though we hear something like this, and we think, yes, it would be nice to have a life of equanimity and clear-sightedness and kindness. I like that, yes. We tend to prefer, and here we have preferences again, a life of ease, right? We want comfort, we want ease, we want things to go our way, even though there may be other ways that other people are trying to walk as well. And in fact, we think maybe if we meditate hard enough, we'll enter into that highest of the 6 realms of Buddhism, Tushita heaven, the realm of bliss, the realm of actually paradise. And how does the Song of Zazen by Hakuin Zenji end? This very place is the lotus land of purity. This very place is paradise. This very body is the body of the Buddha. That's how the great Hakuin Zenji ended his poem. So we want to go into paradise. And actually in 2019, Andy and I were in California, and we were staying somewhere quite close to paradise, which the year before had been burned down, completely gone. And so we might think, okay, I'm going to be reborn in that realm of paradise, but we're always dying and being reborn, and we don't know what realm will come next. So this is the Buddhist cosmology, okay? You don't have to believe it, but how about this? The way you live now is the way you will live. You are setting the stage. So every time you ignore someone who needs your attention. You are setting the stage for next life as cockroach. Could be, right? Could be anything. We don't know. That's the point. We have the opportunity. We have the choice. Every single moment of our lives to be a person of virtue, of kindness, or to be a person who's caught up in all the self-absorption of the ego entity that sees itself separate from all other beings. Well, speaking again of paradise, Choen was driving over on Sunday, and she lives, that's a little bit far away, so she was listening to a TED Talk on PBS in which there was a very interesting interview, first with two people who had lived in paradise and returned, and then an interview with the author Pico Iyer. Some of you are familiar with his work. So she was hearing his description of Tibetans who were circumambulating after a teaching of His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. And this is what he said. Tibetans in sunglasses joined their elders in circumambulation. I did too. People around me were flinging ceremonial white scarves up towards ledges 20 or 30 feet above. Can you envision that? Oh, these white, we have a Tibetan white scarf there, kata. Flinging them up. And soon I could imagine that I was turning the wheel of time myself, playing out some eternal cycle of existence as I walked round and round, each circling, bringing me a new set of neighbors. So here we are. We're in this circle of neighbors. All of you at this moment are in this. We have become neighbors. I thought then, Iyer said, of the stirring words of the Franciscan priest Richard Rohr. Our goal in life, he often stressed, is not to become spiritual, but to become human.
That's great.
Isn't it? Wow, to become human. That was, of course, the heart of the Buddha's teaching as well, and the sense of potential he passed on to anyone who cared to listen. Each of us has the capacity, through the discerning use of our minds, to see past some of our ignorance and come to terms with life as it is. Around me, the Dalai Lama had concluded his talk for the day on why the enlightened come back to the world to serve others. Around me, the little lanes were filling with so many maroon-robed monks spilling out to chat or drink tea together as a full moon rose above the village walls, that I might have been in Lhasa again, risen from its ashes. And then at Iyer's final words, Choen told me she couldn't believe her ears. He ends this interview. I recalled how the Zen teacher, Edo Roshi, thinking of the cries of abandonment of Jesus upon the cross, had delivered a teaching that must have unsettled many of his students. The struggle of your life, he said, is your paradise. And then Choen told me, here I am. I'm driving over to sit with Ada Roshi's Dharma air. Quite amazing. The New York Times Sunday magazine was devoted to a number of people who have passed away in 2024. One of them was an old friend of mine from many, many years ago named Hetty Jones. She had been the wife of, now he's Amira Baraka, Leroy Jones. And so I was mulling over some of the times that we had in a communal setting back in late 60s. And then I found out that Jimmy Carter had passed away. Peter Baker, who's the chief White House correspondent for the Times, wrote a beautiful obituary. How many of you read it? It's really very well done. I wanted to share a few excerpts from it because, to me, Carter epitomized what it means to live a life of virtue, compassion, and undertake whatever struggles are necessary to do what? To serve others. And that was his life. That was for him his practice. Yes, he was a very devout Baptist, but he wouldn't have said that that was really what was motivating him. It just happened to be the way he framed it. As maybe most of you know, he was born on October 1st, which was Ada Roshi's birthday, the day before my birthday, in 1924 in Plains, Georgia, on a family peanut farm. And he became governor of Georgia from 1971 to 75. And during that time, he gathered a staff of Georgians who were black and white, including Stuart Eisenstadt, who was Jewish, Hamilton Jordan, Jody Powell, Bert Lance, Vernon Jordan, and the Reverend Andrew Young, all of whom remained close to him when he became president. He served as the President of the United States from 1977 to 1981. One of the first things that gave notice to the United States about what this man stood for was when he was in front of the Capitol and proclaimed in his inaugural address, "I say to you quite frankly, the time for racial discrimination is over." This is a Georgian speaking, the Deep South. And one of his first appointments, ambassador to the United Nations, was Andrew Young, former aide to the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. And he also placed women in high positions. One was Patricia Darien, of Jackson, Mississippi, a white civil rights leader who became Assistant Secretary of State for Human Rights and was an instrument of pressure on abusive strongmen around the world. Some of us may remember that his first act as president was to grant amnesty to Vietnam War draft resistors. He was warned that the order would be fiercely opposed in the Senate, as indeed it was. And he replied, "I don't care if all 100 of them are against me. It's the right thing to do." He said once that he had gone to the Capitol to restore the country's faith in itself after the twin traumas of Watergate and Vietnam, to build a new foundation, as he put it, of trust, decency, and compassion. Then came 4 years of distraction of all sorts and drama and very difficult times nationally and internationally. There were Americans held hostage by Iranians for 444 days. An energy crisis brought on by the Arab oil embargo, soaring inflation and interest rates. And he was at odds with Congress over almost everything he wanted to do. Carter's message was sacrifice and pain, wrote Stuart Eisenstadt, who was chief domestic policy advisor and author of President Carter, the White House Years. During an address to the nation on the energy crisis, the president opened by saying, "Tonight, I want to have an unpleasant talk with you about a problem that is unprecedented in our history. So taking up the struggle gladly, without any fear of offending anyone." But one of the most important things he did, I think, was brokering a peace between Israel and Egypt. And this was a very difficult process and went on, and you can imagine how the work with President Anwar el-Sadat of Egypt and Prime Minister Menachem Begin of Israel was very burdened by mutual distrust and doubt. So they had separate meetings with both leaders, and the issues included Israeli withdrawal from the occupied territories, Palestinian rights, Israel's security, an end to the Arab trade embargo, open borders between Israel and Egypt, the rights of Israeli ships to transit the Suez Canal, and the sensitive issues concerning sovereignty over Jerusalem and access to holy places. This is what he wrote looking back from 2006. So nothing was moving along, and there was just constant frustration between both leaders. So he decided that he would invite Sadat and Begin to Camp David to negotiate in the beauty and isolation of the Catoctin Mountains of Maryland. Nothing went well. They were absolutely enemies and wouldn't negotiate at the same table. So for the last 10 days and nights of the process, President Carter would go back and forth between the separate cabins where Sadat and Begin were staying, working with his own team to meticulously craft various documents that they hoped and prayed would serve as the basis for a future peace treaty. Still, 13th day, total impasse. Wasn't working. And Begin finally decided to call it quits. There was a plane waiting for him, the Prime Minister told President Carter. He asked him to call him a car, take him away from Camp David, from its natural beauty, from its sense of possibility, and from perhaps the last real chance at Israeli-Egyptian peace in the 20th century. As Begin and his team packed their bags, President Carter had one more idea. Knowing Begin's love for his 8 grandchildren, he got each of their names and he had 8 photographs made, copies of himself, Begin, and Sadat at Camp David, personally inscribed each of the names of the grandchildren onto the photographs, along with messages expressing his hope that there would one day be peace. Once he had done that, this is the President of the United States. He's walking back and forth to cabins. He's doing everything he can think of, and then finally writing the names of these grandchildren. He walked over to Begin's cabin, hand-delivered them to him, and watched as he went through and vocalized the names of each of the grandchildren with blessings for peace by the President. As Carter observed the Prime Minister, the latter's expression began to change. Carter saw Begin's lips quiver, his eyes tear. Then Begin put his bags down and he said, "Mr. President, I'll make one last try." Some of you are too young to remember this, but 6 months later, in March of 1979, Egypt and Israel signed a peace treaty. However, both Begin and Sadat found that the situation in their respective homes was not at all supportive. Negotiations bogged down. President Carter stepped in again. Begin came back to Washington. Carter flew to Cairo, then Jerusalem, and they finally made the Camp David Awards. While the Palestinian piece of the negotiation would remain unresolved, the image of Mr. Sadat and Mr. Begin shaking hands with a grinning Mr. Carter at the peace treaty signing would become one of the most enduring images of the era. In 1981, the year that Carter's presidency ended, and only 2 years after the 1979 peace treaty was signed, President Sadat was assassinated in an attack by a member of the Egyptian military. Ronald Reagan was elected. The Republicans took the Senate, and everything changed. Of course, those of you who have paid attention during these past 40 years know that the Carters became very involved in Habitat for Humanity, building houses themselves, especially all over the world, really, and that he continued as a peacemaker throughout the globe. And had a number of medical issues as he reached 80, 90, and still kept going, still kept working. He said regarding his inevitable death, I wasn't afraid or particularly sorrowful, except that I wouldn't see the people I loved anymore. But I didn't have any feeling of resentfulness or fear, and I was surprised at that. I just felt a particular equanimity about it. So I just received something from Jane Hirschfield, a poet who was here. We have some wonderful pictures of her book signing and reading. And when I was in California, as I was speaking of being near paradise, we spent a week or so at Green Gulch Farm and had a nice social time with Jane, that 2019 trip. So she sent this with a little note. May the turning year bring unexpected surprises to us all. Love, Jane. You are a North Star for so many. And then she writes, 9 bows. 9 bows, B-O-W-S, is typical for Zen, sign off. She spells it B-O-U-G-H-S. And so this is what she sent, this little card. It's a poem from her most recent book, The Asking, Nguyen's Selected Poems. And here it is. So few grains of happiness measured against all the dark, and still the scales balance. The world asks of us only the strength we have, and we give it. Then it asks more, and we give it.